and this chapter is devoted to some of the most important rook endgames. This is the Philidor position. Black is a pawn up, but fortunately for white, the king is sitting right on the promotion square of that pawn. But it's important that the king will be able to remain there. The simplest way to draw this game is to bring the rook to the third rank, cut the black king off. Then, when black would advance the pawn forward, then immediately go back up and start giving checks from behind. This is the simplest way to draw. If black tries to play differently, they are risking of losing. This is the Lucena position. It's also a very famous one and a very important one. Here white successfully got the pawn to the 7th rank. The problem is the king is right in front of it. Therefore, it's not so simple to promote that pawn to a queen. In order to promote, the king needs to come out. And not only that the king needs to come out, you have to make sure the king will be able to escape the checks of the rook. For example, if white would just give a check and then come out with the king, then black would give a lot of checks to the king, and if the king would go further, the rook can just go back behind the rook, and it's not so simple to make progress. So therefore, white needs to use one of two methods on how to win this endgame. There is the famous bridge method, and then there is another one I'll show you later. Let's first see what the bridge method is about. What that means is that similarly as in the variation we've just seen, white needs to put the rook on the 4th rank. Let me show you why. So if black is just waiting and white now is bringing the king out and check, and the king comes to e5, and after check the rook can interpose, so-called building a bridge. So this is the famous Lucena method. Now let's go back to the beginning, and there is actually another way to win as well, and that is trying to get the rook right here to f8. And the way that works is just playing rook h3. Black keeps the rook on the f file, making sure the white king does not escape. Rook h7, and we're kind of building a different bridge, so the king then can escape. And king d7 does not hold off the pawn. Because of the discovered check, the pawn can promote just as well. Remember, the Philidor and the Lucena position are two key positions to remember. Now we are seeing another really important position when, again, a pawn has been far advanced, but here the catch is that after the rook moves behind the pawn, the rook cannot move without losing the pawn on a7. It's important to note, though, that the rook cannot go from the other side when seemingly the rook cannot move again without losing the a7 pawn, but it can with a check and then promoting the pawn. So remember, the rook needs to be behind the pawn. In general, that's the rule of rook endgames. The rooks are most valuable when they are behind the pawn, whether your own that you're trying to promote or your opponent's that you're trying to hold off. So after rook a1, white can try to bring the king to protect the pawn on a7 with the king and then move the rook out of the corner. Black needs to be careful. The king needs to remain in one of these two squares. It's absolutely essential. If the king would go to f7, white would win thanks to a skewer after this check. Okay, remember, the king needs to stay in one of those two squares, making sure the rook cannot get to the corner. Hence king h7, king e4, king g7, king d5, king h7. Black can just wait. Of course, black could also wait by moving the rook to a2 or a3, would do just the same. The point is, as soon as the king gets to the b file next to the pawn, now the rook threatens to move out to b8 or c8 or d8 or e8, anywhere on the 8th rank, and then promote the pawn. So at this moment, it would be a huge mistake to keep making these waiting moves, because then black would just lose. However, this is the time to start giving these distant checks, so you want to generally keep the rook as far from the king as possible in the first or the second rank, so those checks don't run out easily. As soon as the king is away from the pawn, you have an option to keep checking another couple checks, or just go back behind the pawn, and white here cannot make any progress. Now let's see a situation when a pawn is only on the 6th rank. Now this is somewhat different. Why? Because if black would try to use the same method, let's say now, play rook a1, the white king does have a hiding square, unlike when the pawn is already on the 7th rank right in front of the rook. So here white is just winning easily. Therefore, instead of rook a1, here the key move is rook b6, keeping the white king away from the 6th rank. If white advances the pawn to a7, then already rook a6, and we are at our previous example. Next move, the rook will go back to a1, and as soon as the king gets to the b file, b6 or b7, we will be ready to check from behind on the 1st rank. On the other hand, if the king goes to c5, now the move is rook to f6, keeping pressure on that pawn on a6. So the rook still needs to remain, the white rook needs to remain on the a file. And if the king tries to protect the pawn to again rescue the rook, we cannot wait. We have to keep giving checks, except now it's from the side. Check and check and check, and now the king has no escape from these checks. And if white tries to escape with king c6, then again just rook f6, and now just keep the rook on the 6th rank. And as soon as the pawn advances, then you go behind the pawn. Let's see another rook endgame that's different in that the pawn is not yet so far advanced. However, it's still dangerous for white. The reason for that is that the king is not on the c file, it's not in front of the pawn, and there is no easy way to get there either. Let's see what happens if black tries to assist the pawn with king b5 to advance to c4. If black could make another move and advance that pawn to c4, black indeed would be winning. So white must keep black busy by keep checking. Now, the rule of thumb is, if there are 3 squares, 3 rows, in between the rook and the king, when the king is next to the pawn, black cannot avoid the checks. The checks just keep coming, and now no more checks, but attacking the pawn. And now if rook d5, the rook gets attacked from the side, or if the rook goes behind, then the king manages to cross through to the d file, or if the king protects the pawn, then the checks continue. But what happens if instead of king b5, black makes a waiting move? And this is where in this game between Kochiev and Smyslov, white made a mistake. White has to be actually careful. Here the best move is king e4. However, white played king e2, and now black is winning. Let's see why. What's the difference? King b5, check, king a4, rook c1, king b4, check, king a3, rook c1, looks like the same. The difference is that now, after the rook protects the pawn on c5, the king is too far from the e4 square to attack the rook, and then after king b2, the rook cannot hold off the c-pawn anymore, because after rook c4, king b3, and now the game is winning. Important note that after king b2, white again had no time to play king e4 because of the in-between check with rook d4 and then capturing the rook. And let's see one more last example in this chapter. In this position, we have something similar as we've seen when a passed pawn on the h-file is far advanced. The problem is black did not reach these key hiding squares, remember, where the king had to be. The problem is now white threatens to move the rook to c8 and check, and then promote the pawn. So black is trying to hide from the check. The problem is a little pawn sacrifice, breakthrough, c5. Now this pawn threatens to advance, and if the king takes, then check, or if the pawn takes, check again, and the pawn gets to promote. These were some of the most important basic rook endgames.
Hi, this is Grandmaster Damian Lemos. First of all, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you would like to receive more free chess videos from us, you can just click the subscribe button below. I would also highly recommend signing up for my free mail course, the 10 Grandmaster Secrets to Dominate Chess. During this exclusive course from onlinechesslessons.net, I'll share with you my own Grandmaster shortcuts to effective attacking, defending, and growth hacks to improving your chess without complicated books or memorization. So sign up by clicking the sidebar on the right, and I know you won't be disappointed. Once more, this is Damian for onlinechesslessons.net, and I'll see you in my videos. Thank you.